This is episode 63 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview-style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. This podcast is generously sponsored by Think Global. Think Global is a business advisory firm working with women entrepreneurs around the globe to scale their businesses to the next level. Today, I'd like to welcome MiShon Landry. MiShon CDP is a certified diversity professional and owner of Culture Consultants located in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. She is a diversity champion and has a passion for leadership, diversity, STEM, relationship building, as well as business development principles. MiShon has over a decade of experience in people, program, project management, leadership, and entrepreneurial expertise. She functions as a change agent and influencer, providing strategies, solutions, training, tools, resources, and thought leadership. MiShon fosters inclusion across organizations, helps leaders to translate business strategy, engagement, and objectives into attainable goals. The Inclusion Leadership Workshop is one that she enjoys facilitating, and she's been interviewed by Working Mother and Talent Management magazine. MiShon is faith and family oriented. She is deeply involved in the community through her volunteer efforts with the Fort Worth Food and Wine Festival, Leadership ISD of Tarrant County, and the City of North Richland Hills. Keep NRH Beautiful, Beautiful Commission Board. MiShon, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Katrina.
Oh, 1 second. There we go. I'm getting a spinning wheel. We might, did you, when I was reading the bio, was I cutting? MiShon, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. How did you get your start in diversity?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, wow.
That's an interesting story.
Yeah.
My career goes back almost 20 years ago when I was doing staffing. And at the time I was working for Kelly Services, which people know. And I was doing recruiting staffing, and I had the opportunity to work on site with Johnson & Johnson Medical.
Oh.
And yeah, so Johnson & Johnson Medical used Kelly Services to provide staffing services. And one of the things that we did is we would leverage Kelly Scientific, so recruiting for like R&D positions, or Kelly Technical to recruit for IT related positions. And then they would use minority owned business and staffing firms for purposes of recruiting positions. So in a sense, I was using and doing supplier diversity before I even knew that that was supplier diversity.
Got it.
Fast forward probably about 12 years, maybe, give or take. I had the opportunity, I was working with ADP, the payroll company, and one of the general managers and DVPs said to me, "Hey, MiShon, ADP is starting their diversity and inclusion initiative. I'd like for you to be a part of it." And as a result, I ended up starting and helping with creating ADP's first diversity resource group.
Wow.
So that's how I actually start in
diversity.
My gosh. Yeah.
What a really awesome path that you took. So how did you make the leap into entrepreneurship?
Well, going back again to those days of staffing, like I said, having the opportunity to work with Johnson & Johnson and Kelly Services was great. After working for Kelly for 4 years, the site location where I was with Johnson & Johnson actually moved their operations to Malaysia and closed that facility. And as a result, a friend of mine recruited me to another staffing company, a little bit smaller than Kelly, but I helped to create an on-site for a customer very similar to the situation like Johnson & Johnson's. And so after doing that in a very short time frame, I thought to myself, well, I can do this myself. And so I ended up starting my own staffing company called Integrity Staffing. So that was my first go around with entrepreneurship. I did Integrity Staffing for 5 years. And then after 5 years and 10 years of staffing almost, I thought to myself, I'm not really sure this is what I want to continue doing.
Sure.
And so I went back into corporate America and worked in corporate America for 9 years before deciding to do my business culture consultants again.
Hey, it is all a journey. I'm always so fascinated by those people who have very linear paths. Like they graduated high school, they went to college, they got a degree, and then they do the thing that their degree is in, right? And most of us, I feel like we have, when you look in the rearview mirror, you can see how all the dots connect, and it seems to make so much sense of how you got to where you are. But as you're making those decisions, it always feels like, oh, well, that's a change or that's a shift. So that's a really cool backstory. What do you love about being an entrepreneur?
I love the autonomy. I love the independence. I love the opportunity to share with others, and help others with that I've been given. So those are the things that I really love. Those are the things that I love the most.
How do you decide what organizations to get involved with? When I was sharing your bio, there's a couple local organizations and I think maybe a national one on there. How are you choosing where you spend your time and share your gifts?
That's a great question. So when I worked for ADP, one of the things that I did frequently, because I had a very large presence with the diversity resource group it was across the United States, but I would coordinate various community functions. And so I had relationships with like American Heart and the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. And, there was a number of them that I had a lot of connections and networks with. But the thing about it is I worked in Dallas and lived in another city. And so when I wanted to do something more locally, I was looking around and I thought, why not do something in my own community?
Yeah.
And that's how I got involved with the city of North Richland Hills, keeping hills beautiful. The Fort Worth Food and Wine Festival, it was kind of again, looking for something to do, right in my own,
sounds so fun.
And, it was one of those where I'm blessed, to be a part of that organization because truly they're more than just food and wine. They actually give scholarships to high school students who are looking to go into culinary careers or marketing careers. And so it's a great avenue and a great organization to be a part of because you do get to enjoy the food and wine, but it's got a better purpose and a bigger purpose than what it just sounds like.
Sure.
So I thought about it. But again, I was just looking for something locally to be a part of.
Yeah. Who do you really enjoy working with?
In terms of, help me with that question.
So your clients, so you started this business to serve a certain population. Who is that? And like, what's fulfilling about that?
It's interesting. I've had the opportunity to work with both Fortune 500 and private as well as small business companies, vast in size. And I don't know yet. Haven't gotten to that point where I can say, I really enjoy this dynamic or that dynamic. I've worked with different organizations as well and delivered services to them. And probably, I don't know. It's just kind of a hard question for me to answer because I haven't really thought about that.
Right. You're just like, overall, I enjoy it. I love it.
I enjoy the work that I do.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing the work, then it doesn't matter who I'm doing it with.
Right. It makes total sense. What would you say is, I guess to better frame the question, how do you keep up with trends, news, competitors? Like, how do you stay fresh and current in what you're doing?
Great question. So one thing I can tell you, I'm not a news person. I don't like watching the news simply because there tends to be a lot of negativity centered around the news oftentimes. But I do get a lot of information. It's kind of sad, but I get it from my husband. If there's something major happening, he lets me know. And then I also have subscriptions to different avenues that touch my own field. So for example, Diversity Inc. is a great resource for me. Entrepreneur, Forbes, I literally, I subscribe to those. And so I have an opportunity to read things that are happening as it relates to the business or things that are happening in the news. But yeah, I think those are the avenues that I use.
Yeah, no, those are great. What do you do? What do you do to recover from a tough day? Presuming you have tough days.
Honestly, I think that I'm a person of faith, as you mentioned earlier. And so for me, if it's really tough, it's going to be some prayer involved.
Sure.
But for me, it's just being in that quiet space.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting out on the patio, just having that quiet space does a lot for me. So yeah, kind of a meditation in a sense, but having that quiet space.
Right. What would you say is, and we've had, well, to that point, so many of the people I've interviewed on this podcast, they have all said something very similar of going in nature or being outside, and having that quiet space. And I think that is just so good for us, and always a good reminder.
Yes. Oxygen itself in nature is so good for you, right?
Right. We forget the simple things, like we're humans and we need oxygen, I love that. What are some of the things that you do to grow your business? Like what has worked and been successful for you?
I do a lot of networking in terms of using LinkedIn really using LinkedIn. I think a lot of people use LinkedIn from a perspective of just connecting with people, but adding them to their database. I don't just connect. I try and make connections, have conversations. I do post on LinkedIn frequently. I do blogs on LinkedIn. So I use it as a resource quite often. I also do a lot of conferences and things of that nature. So the opportunity to meet individuals at these conferences, which is great, but you also get the knowledge piece of it that adds value to you as well. So those are probably my two components that I use most often. I'm starting to do some new things, but I haven't gotten data off of them to share. They're so new, but those have worked for me in the past.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned the new things. I recently heard from another agency friend of mine to use the 70-20-10 rule. So 70% is the things that you always do, work. So for you, it would be LinkedIn and conferences. The 20% is sort of exploratory, like other people in your competitive set are having good success and results with it, but yet you haven't necessarily done it. And then the 10% is, hey, I heard about this new concept. It's not really proven, but I think it could work. So I think it's always good to dabble and find what your mix is, And to LinkedIn, that's how you and I met. I'm almost positive, right? Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. When you're choosing conferences, are you tending to choose conferences that are within your industry, or do you tend to go outside of your industry for that?
I do both, honestly. I do quite a few industry related, because it's always good to, number one, get the information and be up to date with that. So that's another way that I get my information.
Sure, yeah.
But the other part of it, it's nice to be able to network with individuals within the industry, because it helps me to grow my business.
Right.
And then the other part of it, I do go outside, but I don't venture off too far outside, simply because, again, I think that it makes sense for me to stay where I am, the zone of the diversity and inclusion pieces.
Right. So my last question as we wrap up is, as an industry expert, what is on your radar now that you feel like in another year or two from now, we'll all be talking about? It'll be some hot topic.
Wow. Well, I think inclusion is one thing that's huge right now. When you look at what's happening today in terms of our political climate, in terms of our social climate, diversity and inclusion, it's not going away anytime soon. I think that there are some opportunities for true leadership and for individuals to step up for that leadership. And so when you look at inclusive leadership, I think you're going to start to hear more about that and how inclusive leadership will impact communities, political systems, corporations in a way that I think will be revolutionary. So I think that's a huge point and a huge way of, the way to the future.
Spot on with that. I've been noticing just like little inklings of conversation where I hear, someone is running for a political office that never imagined themselves to run for a political office, but they're feeling like now is their time to step up and lead. And I mean, I can think of probably a good handful that's happened in the last couple of months. And I think you're right, both on the political side, the business side, just everywhere. I think many of us are inspired to step into bigger roles.
Yes.
Well, I love that. That's a perfect spot to end on. Thank you, MiShon, for being here.
Thank you, Katrina, for having me.
Of course, you're welcome.